Hello there. I hope that you guys have a wonderful night. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is part 2 of the Spiderland Creepypasta story. Kent threw his remaining tickets in the man's face, then bolted up the ramp. He stopped short, recalling him Fern. Once he noticed the entrance was through the mouth of a giant tarantula, its 8 hairy legs looming over him like a mother reaching for a child. Its red eyes looked hungry, and its white fangs looked real. Kent was overwhelmed with anxiety, but if Brian was in there, then he had no choice other than to go after him. He glanced sheepishly at the ticket taker, who was facing the other way, and shuffled inside. Kent could hardly see a thing inside the funhouse, since there was just enough light to accent the artificial webs lining the walls. His heart was beating so hard it hurt. The air was thin, and the temperature felt like it was slowly rising. "Brian!" he called out sporadically, his lone voice reverberating through the cold iron walls. Exploring further, Kent thought he saw something move, but it was just his warped reflection in the funhouse mirrors. He continued cautiously past the bounce bridge, past the moving floors, past the rope net, until he came to a spinning corridor. Kent could see the light coming from the exit at the other end, but the hypnotic effects of the lines painting on the cylinder corridor created a vertigo effect. He tried to turn back, yet had no idea where he was anymore. "Brian!" he managed one last time, and fell unconscious. The sun shone through Kent's eyelids. As the chirping of the birds coaxed him awake, he lay on the ground near a single tree, his body aching all over. The carnival was gone. All that remained was an empty field of dirt and scattered patches of the dead grass. "Brian!" Kent whispered. Where was his son? He wanted to cry, but it was too soon. Brian could be safe nearby. Someone must have noticed that he was alone and brought him to safety. There was a village inside, so there could be a police station. Kent stood up and started towards the town. As they stumbled through the field, he tried to burst together why he passed out and how the carnival could have vanished overnight. The town was small but spread out. Houses were a little run down but charming with their white trim and pastel paint jobs. Kent couldn't immediately see if there was a police station around, so he decided to check out the local eatery to ask where it was. As he walked through the entrance, a little bell rang, and all the patrons turned to see who was coming in. They didn't seem happy to sit to rest. Kent wasted no time. "Can someone tell me where the police station is?" No one answered. In fact, everyone put down their forks and knife, their glasses, the sandwich. They all looked at Kent with dissatisfied eyes. Even the waitress were staring daggers at him. "I'm sorry, I just need the police, please," Kent said as politely as he could under the circumstance. "The police, Oh, gruffle man grumbled. "You have an accident?" No, my son is missing." We were at the carnival last night and Ken wasn't sure how to finish his sentence, but as it turned out he didn't need to. What's carnival? A waitress chimed in. The one last weekend? Last weekend? No, the one last night. But just as he said those words, Kent realized that he didn't know how long he'd been unconscious. Sorry, son, but the only carnival around here took off 3 days ago. The gruff man assured him. You on drugs or something? Asked the young homely lady. You city people always on them drugs. Ken lost his appetite. He lost his patience. Just tell me where the police station is. I need to go there right now. No one spoke. They just picked up their forks and knives, their glasses, the sandwich, and went on with their business. A waitress finally replied, Ain't no police station here. What kind of place is this? Ken shouted. How can you have no police station? Don't get your britches in bunch, mister, said the waitress. This here is a small town. We don't got many problems. If we do, we handle them ourselves. Of course you do, Kent repeated. Can I use a phone then? A different old man chuckled lightly before replying. Ain't had no phone service in 8 years, friend. Kent was stunned. He stared at the old man in disbelief, then at the waitress, then at a payphone on the wall at the back of the restaurant. Pushing the waitress aside, he marched the phone and picked up the receiver with determination. There was no dial tone. He hung it up and hung his head in despair. No police, no phone. How could he take Brian to a place like this? Told you so, the old man called to him. Storm knocked out the power lines 8 years ago. Town didn't got money to fix them. Nobody to go anyway. Small town we got here. Some of our patrons nodded in agreement at the old man's sentiment. There was no concern for the outside world in this town. Perhaps there was no concern for missing boy. Cam walked slowly back to the front door in the feed and placed his hand on the knob. He had to make sure there really was no police station, as well as no working phones. The carnies weren't exactly trustworthy, and Kent was hesitant to believe what he was being told. He turned around to say one last thing before leaving. If anyone sees a little boy they don't recognize, please keep him here until I come back. No one paid much attention as Ken turned to leave. He was accosted by a stickly bearded man tripping through the doorway. They took her, he cried. They took her. He fell to his knees, grabbing Kent's pant leg and looking up at him meekly. Get him the hell out of here. A voice shouted from behind the counter. We've had enough of this. The man trembled as he attempted to stand, relying on Kent's arm to pull himself up. Kent just stood there wondering if he could shake the man off or let him continue. Soon the faces were right up close to each other. They took her, the man whispered, sending a chill through Kent's veins. Get off him, you nut job, a large man yelled, pulling the stickly bearded fellow off of Kent and throwing him against the door. Now get out of here. Hold on a second, Kent interjected. Let you steer him out. The large man scowled at Kent. He's crazy. There's no sense listening to him. Please help me, cried the stickly man, grabbing the front of Kent's jacket. They won't help me. No one from this town will help me. He began shaking Kent vigorously, forcing him to push the man away. He fell to the floor, sobbing. I don't know what's going on here, said Kent, but my son is missing, and this man seems to be missing someone too. Let him speak. They took her, the stickly man cried once more. Shut the hell up, the large man said calmly and sternly. Who took her, and who did they take? Kent asked. My daughter. They took my daughter. They took Charlotte, cried the stickly man. Who? Kent demanded. Who took her? The stickly man's eyes grew wide. Then he closed them tight. The patrons all paused for a moment and continued their business. Kent waited for the man's response, but it never came. You're wasting your time, buddy. The large man said. He doesn't know what he's saying. Kent knelt down and put his hand on the stickly man's shoulder. Do you know where they took her? Again the man's eye grew wide and wider still. The large man's face became cross, and the tensions became thick. The stickly bearded man spoke softly and with little strength. Past where the river bends. Kent stopped breathing for a moment when he heard those words. The stickly man spoke again, but with more volume and vigor. Past where the silo stands. Some of the patrons began to grumble and mutter inaudible things. Kent was completely entranced by the terror swirling in the stickly man's eyes. Past where they paint the houses. What? I don't understand, Kent whispered. The stickly man looked directly into Kent's eyes, his face trembling. Past where they paint the big houses. Past where they paint the houses. Kent suddenly agreed with the locals that this man must be insane, and backed away a few feet, but the man continued to stare into Kent's eyes, repeating himself louder and louder. Past where they paint the houses. Past where they paint the houses. Past where they paint the houses. Kent was petrified by the stickly man's mantra. He looked around, hoping someone was going to do something, but they didn't need to. The stickly man began to choke and gasp for air. In a moment he was on the floor, motionless, no one better than I. Finally, sighed the large man. Finally, Kent shouted angrily. That was what you say when this man seemed to have a heart attack? It was the local nut, and now he cracked. Let it go. You have a son to find, don't you? Kent knelt down again to check if the stickly man was breathing. His heart was beating, so Kent propped him up into an empty booth. This man needs medical attention. He is fine, the large man insisted, and he and everyone else ignored Kent for the duration of his stay at their fine eatery. Storming out of the front door, Kent resolved that the large man was right. He had a son to find. I hope that you guys enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down below what you thought about it. This was part 2 of Spiderland. I will upload part 3 on Friday next week. Have a wonderful night. Please stay safe.